She's our daughter, a sister, a niece, a granddaughter, a cousin, and a girlfriend. We miss her, and we will always love her.
We were first introduced to Sierah Wednesday, learning that after a bike ride with her boyfriend, she never made it home. Since then, signs and flyers went up all over, friends and family urging everyone to keep an eye out for the University of Toledo student. Search after search conducted over the past several days, then an arrest.
The defendant will be held without bond until we have our hearing.
Police tell us this man, 57-year-old James Dean Worley, played a part in what happened to Sierah. Here, investigators search his property, including this barn. Now, heartbreak. Police tell us they believe to have found Sierah's remains on County Road 7.
Positive identification will be made through either fingerprints or DNA, but at this time, we strongly believe that this is Sierah.
Fulton County Sheriff Roy Miller says the investigation is far from over as crews will continue to collect evidence. Worley is currently only charged with 1 count of abduction.
We do anticipate additional charges against the suspect.
While police pursue justice for Sierah, those who know her remember her as a remarkable person.
With a contagious smile. She was a loving person who has touched many people in her life.
Law enforcement returned to the home Sunday of James Worley here in Delta. He's charged with abduction as part of the ongoing investigation into the disappearance and death of Sierah Joughin. The Fulton County Sheriff's Department is not saying anything today about the search efforts. We did see vehicles and investigators here from the Sheriff's Department, the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, as well as the FBI. Evidence was being removed from Worley's 3-acre property and taken away. Sheriff Ray Miller is on record as saying more charges could be filed against Worley. 20-year-old Sierah disappeared on Tuesday. Friday, along County Road 7 in Metamora, officials discovered what they believe to be the remains of a woman. Sierah was a manager major at the University of Toledo. Now, Worley remains in the Correction Center of Northwest Ohio without bond. He'll be back in court on Wednesday. Meanwhile, a positive identification of the remains will be made during an autopsy by the Lucas County Coroner's Office.
It's been nearly 3 weeks since authorities found Sierah's body, yet just what caused her death wasn't revealed, and tonight we do have an answer.
Our Emily Nelson joining us live in studio with more. So, Emily, what'd you find out?
Well, Jerry and Emily, the medical officials in Fulton County just released her autopsy report today. The medical examiner listed the official cause of death as asphyxiation. Her body was found bound and gagged with a large plastic device lodged in her mouth. It's believed that device obstructed her airway and ultimately led to her death.
Do we know if she was assaulted, sexually assaulted in any way?
We do. The report showed she was not sexually assaulted, and it's important to note her body was also found intact and there wasn't any significant trauma to her body. But there are still many questions left to answer. I want to walk you all through the timeline of events in this case. So we initially saw, obviously, Sierra was last seen on Tuesday, July 19th, around 6:45 p.m. while riding her bike on a rural road in Metamora. Now, that same evening, around 11 p.m., Sierra is officially reported missing. July 21st, her bike is found in a cornfield off County Road 6 and County Road T. On Friday, July 22nd, 57-year-old James Worley is arrested in connection with her disappearance. On Wednesday, July 27th, James Worley is officially charged with aggravated murder and kidnapping. On Thursday, the 28th, police reveal evidence that shows Worley had duct tape in his possession on his property with Sierra's DNA on it. On Friday, July 29th, Sierra's funeral is held in Sylvania. Now, Tuesday, August 2nd, the Attorney General's office issues a statement stating no other remains were found on Worley's property. And of course, today, her autopsy is revealed. Now, the autopsy lists her time of death as 9 p.m. on July 22nd. That's the day she was found, and because that's also when the medical examiner received received her body. That's the time they listed as her death.
Horrifying new details emerging in these unsealed warrants here. Apparently, investigators found a hidden room inside this barn here behind me. There was blood on the walls of that room, blood inside of a freezer, and apparently restraints for holding people against their will. The documents say following a discussion with Worley while they were talking to neighbors in the area, that's when they requested a search warrant. During the search, they apparently found several pairs of female underwear, as well as zip tie restraints, a ski mask, and mace inside his truck. The documents say Sierra's blood was found on Worley's motorcycle and that duct tape had both his and Sierra's DNA on it. Apparently, Worley also told investigators he had hidden cameras set up all over his property, and investigators found a nanny cam. Now, the search warrant says Worley fits that of a serial offender and that there are potentially additional unknown victims. It was revealed in these documents that Sierra was found buried in a shallow grave.
What, if anything, did he tell investigators that kind of caught their attention?
Well, Worley apparently told investigators, according to these documents, that his motorcycle had broken down and that he pushed it into the cornfields where they found Sierra's bike. He apparently told investigators there were 2 bikes there and that he may have touched one of them. That's, of course, when they requested that search warrant. And he also said he lost a helmet, and when they recovered a motorcycle helmet there at that scene, they found human blood on it.
A deal may be in the works for the man accused of killing Sierah Joughin, the Fulton County woman abducted from her bike and murdered. A potential deal could remove the death penalty. I-Team reporter Sean Haggerty just back from Wauseon with that major move. Sean.
Christian, it's not a done deal. It's something being proposed by the prosecution. The defense is still mulling it over with the defendant, James Worley, but it's the first sign that this case may never go to trial. In a long-sleeve gray shirt, James Worley slowly made his way into the Fulton County Common Pleas courtroom Wednesday afternoon. The hearing addressed a request from the defense to move the trial date after getting new information from Worley's sister. That pointed an investigator several different directions.
I literally have a 3-foot pile of documents as a result of Mr. Erickson's investigation.
The judge granted the request to move the trial to March so a defense neuropsychologist can review the data. After the hearing, the bombshell so many have speculated about.
We have just received a proposed plea agreement from the state of Ohio.
So there may never be a trial into the death of Sierah Joughin. This deal would pull the death penalty off the table.
Yes, it does. But, there's some other stipulations and concerns, that we'll be able to talk about next time.
County Prosecutor Scott Hasselman would not comment on the plea proposal. Now everyone waits to see if Worley takes the deal, including his lawyers.
I can't tell you that yet. We don't know.
We are just days away from the trial of James Worley, the man accused of kidnapping and murdering Sierra.
There's several reasons why this trial is expected to take a long time. First of all, jury selection will take exactly a week. And then those jurors that are picked to sit on the jury will listen to testimony from close to 4 dozen witnesses that take the stand and take a look at close to 400 pieces of evidence, all to determine if James Worley is guilty or not guilty. He faces 17 charges, including murder, kidnapping, and aggravated murder. If found guilty, he could face the death penalty. It's a big case with even bigger stakes. Once the jury is seated, the state will start calling witnesses. On their witness list are several members of law enforcement who were involved with this case, but also people who knew Sierra and Worley, including Sierra's boyfriend, the last person who saw her alive, and Mark Worley, the defendant's brother. But all of this can be avoided if Worley decides to take the plea deal offered by the state. This is proof of the plea offer. It has been sealed and the details are not public record yet. So we don't know what the state is offering Worley in order to resolve this case without a trial. But most plea deals in capital cases allow the defendant to plead to lesser charges and face a life in prison sentence rather than the possibility of being sentenced to death.
James Worley was present for every word of questioning of potential jurors. Today, the men and women who could decide his fate were pressed on the death penalty. That's because this is a capital murder case. Jurors were asked if they could deliver a death penalty verdict if Worley's guilt is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Some answers were emotional, others were conclusive and swift.
If you were the last person to sign the verdict form, everyone else has voted that the aggravating circumstances outweigh mitigating factors, and now it's up to you. And you know that if you sign that form, the defendant will be put to death. Would you be able to sign your name to that verdict form?
No.
Jury selection also probing for bias with questions about any influences on potential jurors, such as discussing this case with family and friends or following it in the news and on social media. Earlier in the day, James Worley sharing complaints with the Honorable Jeffrey Robinson about his schedule at CCNO. He claims won't allow him to be, quote, on the ball because of lack of sleep and not being able to meet privately with his defense team.
So what happened last night?
Oh, it's happened at 3 o'clock in the morning over the last, since you ordered me to come here. I'll take my pills about 10 usually. Medicine comes around at night, my blood pressure pills, and then I take it twice a day, so I should be taking it in the morning. They'll wake me up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I've only got till 5 to sleep. I have to put my clothes on. I'm going to go out as far as the corner store across the road. Might be there for a minute, might be there for 10 minutes, take the pills, march me back, and then I get to try to go back to sleep. They're interrupting my short period of rest that I do have. I need to come in here on the ball, awake. I want to pay.
The judge ordered all attorneys in this case to not mention any of the publicity surrounding this case. But just hours into the voir dire, the Honorable Jeff Robinson addressed it himself. After it appeared he became angry with so many jurors saying that they could not be unbiased in this case.
All right, now look, I'm going to ask some specific questions. And I'm trying to find an unbiased jury here. The media loves to sensationalize and exaggerate because that's how they get ratings. If any of you believe anything on social media, you've got to be out of your mind because that's all garbage for the most part.
One by one, we saw the dismissed jurors walking out of the courthouse, but still several jurors remain, all in a pool of potential jurors who could be picked to determine James Worley's fate.
The jury was supposed to be picked and seated in the trial of the people versus James Worley, but that is not happening.
The judge decided to pick that final jury next week to allow for everybody to have one extra day to prepare for that trial to begin on Monday. Now, this morning, the judge, along with staff, were organizing the courtroom, preparing for the final 50 jurors, but also making room for those who will be in the courtroom to watch the beginning of the trial. Court will be back in session Monday around 8:30. The attorneys will work through 50 jurors until they have the final 12 seated, along with 6 alternates. With this being a high-profile case and a capital case, the judge wants more than just the regular 2 alternates to be prepared to take over in case a seated juror is excused. And this trial is expected to not just be long, but will also be difficult given the evidence and testimony that's ahead. The state and the defense have been preparing their cases for close to 2 years, and Monday there's no turning back.
I believe fully that the pressure here is on the parties who are bringing this litigation. So I would like to thank you for your hard work. I can't tell you that I'm looking forward to the trial. I am not, but I'm certain that you all do an excellent job in presenting your respective cases. And I want you to know you have my respect for the work that you've done.
Now, what I can tell you is that the final jury will be seated Monday morning. That is the hope. Then comes lunch. After lunch, they hope to do jury instructions, opening statements, and then the first witness of the state will be called.
To me, it was just amazing that, she was just comfortable in who she was. And that radiated, I think, to a lot of people. The outpouring of concern and compassion is like, it's mind-boggling. Like I get emails and messages and posts on Facebook. Teachers that had her, coaches that had her. It was just very, very warming. Because we all think she's great. But it's nice to see that other people responded to her as well. And might say, "Oh, I remember when she did this. It was so funny in class," or. She was so quick-witted, she came up with this, and it's, it just makes you feel good. We are still very much advocating Sierra's Law. It's Senate Bill 67. It's a violent offender registry. So if they had a database and law enforcement were able to access it, instead of finding her in 3 days, would they have found her in 24 hours, 48 hours? Would that made a difference in finding her alive versus finding her dead? So to me, it's huge. And there's national databases for everything. You know, why not this?
Ba 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 na na ba 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 na na oh ba